The notification came at 2:14 in the morning. Marcus didn't see it right away. He was asleep. Exhausted from a double shift at the warehouse, his phone was on the nightstand, face down, on silent. The screen lit up briefly, then went dark. The message was simple. Clinical. Your account has been temporarily restricted due to suspicious activity. Please contact us immediately. Marcus woke up at 5:30, like he always did, before the alarm. His body had learned the rhythm. Wake up, shower, coffee, work. It had been like that for 3 years, every day, no breaks, no vacations, no sick days, just work. Because work meant money, and money meant college, and college meant a future, a real future, not the one he'd been handed, the one he was building, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. He checked his phone while the coffee brewed, saw the notification, read it twice, didn't understand. Suspicious activity. What did that mean? He opened the banking app, entered his password. A message appeared in red. Account restricted. Contact customer service. His stomach dropped. Not in a dramatic way, just a quiet sinking feeling, like something small but important had broken. He called the number. It was early, 5:43. He didn't expect anyone to answer, but the system picked up. Automated voice, cold, efficient. Thank you for calling. Your call is important to us. Please stay on the line. The hold music was cheerful, insulting. He waited. 7 minutes, 12 minutes, 18 minutes. The coffee went cold. Finally, a person, male, young, reading from a script. Thank you for calling. Can I have your account number, please? Marcus gave it. Then his name. Then his date of birth. Then his social security number. The man typed. Slowly. Marcus could hear the keys clicking. Each click felt like a small delay, a small obstacle between him and his money. I see the issue. The man's voice was flat. Your account has been flagged for suspicious activity. It's been temporarily frozen pending investigation. What suspicious activity? I haven't done anything. The system detected irregular deposits, multiple cash deposits over a short period. That triggers our fraud prevention protocols. Those aren't irregular. I work 2 jobs. I deposit my tips, my paychecks, every week. I've been doing it for 3 years. I understand. But the system flagged it as potentially fraudulent. We need to verify the source of the funds. The source is my jobs. I'm a warehouse worker and a delivery driver. I get paid, I deposit it. That's it. Do you have documentation? Pay stubs? Tax returns? Yes, I have all of that. You'll need to submit it to our fraud investigation department. They'll review it and make a determination. How long does that take? 7 to 10 business days. Marcus felt the floor tilt slightly. 7 to 10 business days. He had 6 days. 6 days until the college enrollment deadline. 6 days until he had to pay the first semester tuition. 6 days until everything he'd worked for became real, or disappeared. I need access to my account now. I have a deadline. I need to pay for college. I understand your frustration, sir, but the account will remain frozen until the investigation is complete. It's policy. Can I speak to a supervisor? They'll tell you the same thing. This is a security measure. For your protection. Marcus almost laughed. For his protection. They were protecting him from his own money, from his own work, from his own future. But he didn't laugh. He just said, okay. Hung up. Stared at the phone. The coffee was cold. He drank it anyway. Marcus Anthony Reed was 19 years old. He'd grown up in South Phoenix, in a neighborhood where college wasn't assumed. It was rare. A dream that belonged to other people. Richer people. Luckier people. People whose parents had degrees and savings accounts and connections. Marcus had none of those things. His mother worked 2 jobs, day shifts at a laundromat, night shifts cleaning office buildings. His father wasn't around. Hadn't been for 12 years, since Marcus was 7, since the day he said he was going to the store and never came back. Marcus had one older brother, James, 24. He'd tried college once, for a semester, then dropped out. Said it wasn't for him. But Marcus knew the truth. It wasn't that college wasn't for him. It was that college wasn't affordable. James had worked, saved, enrolled, then realized that tuition was only part of it. There were books, fees, housing, food, transportation, all the invisible costs that add up. that multiply, that suffocate. James had dropped out in October. By November, he was back at the warehouse. By December, he'd stopped talking about going back. Marcus didn't want that. Didn't want to be another person who tried and failed. Another statistic. Another kid from South Phoenix who dreamed small and lived smaller. So when he turned 16, he made a plan. A real plan. Not just a wish. A plan with steps, with numbers, with a timeline. Step 1, graduate high school. He did. With a 3.7 GPA. Not perfect, but good. Better than most. Better than anyone expected from a kid who worked 20 hours a week and helped his mom pay rent. Step 2, get a job. A real job. Not fast food, not retail. Something with better pay. Something stable. He applied to a warehouse. They hired him. $8 an hour. 40 hours a week. Plus overtime if he wanted it. He always wanted it. Overtime was time and a half. $12 an hour. He worked every Saturday, most Sundays, every holiday, Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's. He didn't mind. Holidays paid double time, $16 an hour. That was money he couldn't refuse. Step 3, get a second job. He did. Delivery driver. Evenings. Weekends when he wasn't at the warehouse. The pay was worse. $7.25 an hour plus tips. But tips were cash. And cash added up. $5 here, $10 there. On good nights, 40 or 50. He kept every dollar. Didn't spend it. Didn't waste it. Went straight to the bank. Every week. Sometimes twice a week. Small deposits. $20, $35, $60, whatever he had. The teller knew him. Started joking that he was her favorite customer. Always smiling. Always polite. Always depositing. Never withdrawing. She asked him once what he was saving for. He told her. College. She smiled. Said that was wonderful. Said he was smart. Said not many kids his age had that kind of discipline. He thanked her. Felt proud. Felt like he was doing something right. Step 4. Choose a school. He researched. Spent hours in the library. Comparing tuition costs, graduation rates, financial aid packages. He couldn't afford a big university. Not even with financial aid. So he chose a community college. Gateway Community College. 15 minutes from his house. Affordable. Practical. They had a program in computer science. 2 years. Then he could transfer to a university, finish his bachelor's, get a real job, a career. Not just work, a career. He applied in January of his senior year. Got accepted in March. They offered him financial aid, a Pell Grant, some subsidized loans. But it wasn't enough. Not quite. There was still a gap. $3,800 for tuition, fees, books. The first semester. He'd have to pay it out of pocket, or he couldn't enroll. So he saved harder, worked more, took every shift, every delivery, every opportunity. He stopped buying new clothes, stopped going out, stopped doing anything that cost money. His friends thought he was boring, obsessed, but he didn't care. They didn't understand. They had parents who'd pay for college, or they weren't going to college at all. Had already accepted that, made peace with it. But Marcus hadn't, couldn't. He'd seen what happened to people who stayed in South Phoenix, who didn't leave, who didn't have options. They worked warehouses for 40 years, or they didn't work at all. They got hurt, got sick, got forgotten. He didn't want that, wanted more, deserved more. By August, he had it. $3,912, saved over 3 years. Every dollar earned, every tip kept, every sacrifice made. It was in his account, safe, waiting, ready. He'd checked it every day, sometimes twice a day, just to see the number, to remind himself it was real, that he'd done it, that he was going. Enrollment deadline was August 21st. He'd planned to pay on the 15th, give himself a buffer, time to handle any problems, any delays. He'd learned to plan for problems. Life always had problems, but if you planned ahead, you could handle them, absorb them, keep moving forward. He hadn't planned for this. Marcus spent the first day trying to fix it. He called the bank 4 times, spoke to 4 different people, got the same answer. Account frozen, under investigation, 7 to 10 business days. Submit documentation. Wait. He asked if there was a faster process, an emergency option, a supervisor who could override it. They said no. Policy was policy. The system had flagged it. The system had to clear it. Human beings couldn't interfere, couldn't make exceptions. The system was designed to be fair, neutral, unbiased, which meant it treated everyone the same. Guilty until proven innocent. He went to the bank in person, the branch where he'd made all those deposits, where the teller knew him. She was there, behind the counter. He explained the situation. She looked sympathetic, said she remembered him, said she was sorry, but there was nothing she could do. The freeze came from corporate, from the fraud department. She didn't have access, didn't have authority. She suggested he call the number. He said he'd already called. She said to try again, to be persistent, to escalate. He thanked her, left, felt hopeless. He tried calling again, waited 42 minutes on hold, finally got through to a supervisor, explained everything, his jobs, his deposits, his college deadline. The supervisor listened, said she understood, said it was frustrating, but said the policy existed for a reason, to protect customers from fraud, from scams, from criminals. Marcus wanted to scream. He wasn't a criminal. He was a kid trying to go to college. But he didn't scream. He stayed calm, polite, asked if there was any way to expedite the investigation. She said she'd try, said she'd flag it as urgent, said to check back in 3 days. 3 days. He had 6 days until the deadline. If the investigation took 3 days, that gave him 3 days to pay, 3 days to handle any other problems. It was tight, but possible. He thanked her, hung up, tried to breathe, tried to believe it would work out. It didn't. 3 days later, he called back. The account was still frozen. The investigation was still pending. They needed more documentation, more proof, bank statements from his employers, verification letters, notarized affidavits, things he'd never heard of, things that would take time to get. He asked how much time. They said a few more days, maybe a week. He said he didn't have a week, said he had 3 days. They said they'd do their best, but couldn't guarantee anything. Marcus felt something break inside him, not loudly, not dramatically, just a quiet snap, like a rubber band stretched too far. He hung up, sat in his car, in the bank parking lot, put his head on the steering wheel, and for the first time in 3 years, he cried. Not because he was sad, because he was angry, furious, at a system that punished him for working hard, for saving responsibly, for doing everything right. A system that saw his cash deposits and assumed criminality, assumed fraud, assumed guilt, because kids like him, from neighborhoods like his, didn't save money, didn't plan ahead, didn't go to college. So when they did, the system didn't believe them, didn't trust them, flagged them, froze them, stopped them. He'd worked for 3 years, 1,612 days, 4,273 hours, 100,000 plus minutes, all for this. All for $3,912, money that was his, that he'd earned, that was sitting in an account with his name on it, but that he couldn't touch, couldn't use, couldn't access, because an algorithm decided he was suspicious, because a computer program said so, because the system didn't care about context, about stories, about human beings. It only cared about patterns, and his pattern didn't fit. So he was punished. He tried one last thing. He went to the college, to the financial aid office, explained his situation. The woman behind the desk listened. She was older, kind. She said she was sorry, said it happened more than people thought. Banks freezing accounts, students missing deadlines. But there was nothing the college could do. The deadline was firm. If he didn't pay by August 21st, his spot would be given to someone on the wait list. He asked if he could pay late, just a few days, a week at most. She shook her head. Policy. If they made exceptions, everyone would want exceptions. He asked if there was emergency funding, a loan, anything. She checked. There wasn't. Not for first semester students. Not without collateral. He didn't have collateral. He had nothing. Just money he couldn't access. She gave him a phone number for a nonprofit that helped low-income students. He called, left a message. No one called back. He tried to borrow money, asked his mother. She cried, said she didn't have it, said if she did, she'd give it to him. But she was barely making rent, barely keeping food in the house. She offered to sell her car. He said no. She needed the car for work. Without work, they'd lose everything. He asked his brother. James said he'd help if he could, but he had nothing saved. Lived paycheck to paycheck, had his own bills, his own debt, his own life. Marcus understood. Didn't blame him, didn't blame anyone, except the system. He asked his boss at the warehouse. Explained the situation, asked for an advance. The boss said he couldn't. Company policy, no advances, no exceptions. But he said if Marcus needed extra shifts, he could have them. Marcus almost laughed. Extra shifts wouldn't help. He didn't need more money in the future. He needed money now. Today. This week. But there was no way to make $3,000 in 3 days. Not legally, not realistically. He thought about taking out a credit card, charging the tuition, paying it off later. But he didn't have credit, had never needed it, never wanted it. And without credit history, no one would approve him. He tried anyway. Applied to 3 cards. Got denied by all 3. Insufficient credit history. Unable to assess risk. He wasn't even mad. Just numb. August 21st came. The deadline. Marcus woke up at 5:30. Like always. Made coffee. Stared at his phone. The banking app still showed the same message. Account restricted. Under investigation. He'd submitted everything they asked for. Pay stubs. Tax returns. Employment verification letters. Everything. But the investigation was still pending. Still processing. Still taking time he didn't have. He called the bank one last time. Waited on hold for 37 minutes. Spoke to someone new. Explained everything. Again. The person checked the account. Said the investigation was complete. Said everything had been verified. Said the account would be unfrozen within 24 to 48 hours. Marcus felt his chest tighten. 24 to 48 hours. The deadline was today. In 6 hours. He explained that. Said he needed access now. The person said they couldn't expedite it. The unfreezing process was automatic, handled by the system. There was no manual override, no emergency option. He'd have to wait, 24 to 48 hours. Maybe less, but probably not. Marcus hung up, looked at the clock. It was 11:42 in the morning. The payment was due by 5. He had 5 hours and 18 minutes, and no way to access his money. Money that was his. That had been verified as legitimate. That the bank now agreed was not fraudulent. But that was still locked, still frozen, still out of reach. Because the system moved slowly. Because the system didn't care about deadlines, about dreams, about 19-year-old kids who'd worked for 3 years and sacrificed everything. He called the college one more time, explained what happened, that the bank had verified everything, that the account would be unfrozen tomorrow, that he just needed one more day. The woman said she was sorry, truly, but the deadline had passed. His spot had been released, given to someone else, someone who'd paid on time. Marcus asked if he could reapply. For the spring semester, she said yes, but the process would start over. New application, new financial aid, new everything. And there was no guarantee he'd get the same aid package, or any aid at all. Spring enrollment was smaller, more competitive, and his savings would count against him. The system would see he had money. Even if he couldn't access it now, by spring he'd have access. And if he had money, he didn't need aid. That was how it worked. Having money disqualified you from help, even if the money wasn't enough, even if you'd earned every dollar yourself. The system assumed that if you had anything, you didn't need assistance, which meant the students who worked hardest, who saved most, who did everything right, got punished, got less aid, got less opportunity, while students whose parents hid their money, who knew how to game the system, who understood the loopholes, got everything. Marcus thanked her, hung up, sat in his car, in the college parking lot, watching students walk by, laughing, talking, carrying backpacks and coffee, going to class, living the life he was supposed to have, the life he'd earned, the life that had been taken from him, not by failure, not by laziness, not by bad decisions, but by an algorithm, by a computer program designed to catch criminals. That caught him instead. Because he looked suspicious. Because his deposits looked irregular. Because kids from South Phoenix who worked 2 jobs and saved every dollar didn't fit the pattern, didn't match the profile. So the system flagged him, investigated him, delayed him, destroyed him. He drove home, slowly, carefully, feeling nothing, numb, empty. His mother was at work. The house was quiet. He went to his room, sat on the bed, looked around, at the acceptance letter still taped to the wall, at the class schedule he'd printed out, at the textbooks he'd bought early, used online to save money. Everything was ready, everything except him. His phone buzzed. A notification. He looked at it. The banking app. Account access restored. Your account is now available for use. We apologize for any inconvenience. Inconvenience. It was 6:47 in the evening, 1 hour and 47 minutes after the deadline. His account was unfrozen. His money was accessible. All $3,912, sitting there, waiting, useless. He opened the app, looked at the balance, saw the number he'd been watching for 3 years, growing, slowly, steadily. From 0 to 3,912, every deposit recorded, every sacrifice counted. It was all there, all his, all meaningless. He thought about withdrawing it, all of it, in cash, just to hold it, to see it, to prove to himself it was real, that he'd done it. But what would be the point? It wouldn't change anything, wouldn't give him back his spot, wouldn't rewind time, wouldn't make the system care. So he just sat there, staring at the number, feeling the weight of it. Not the weight of money, the weight of time, of effort, of hope. 3 years of his life, condensed into a number on a screen. A number that meant nothing now. A number that would sit there, waiting. For what? For spring. For another application. For another chance. That might not come. That probably wouldn't come. Marcus didn't cry this time. Didn't break down. Didn't scream or punch the wall or do anything dramatic. He just sat there, quiet, still, feeling the slow creeping realization that everything he'd worked for was gone. Not stolen, not lost, just delayed, blocked, frozen, by a system that didn't see him, didn't know him, didn't care. He thought about James, about how he'd tried college and failed, about how Marcus had promised himself he'd be different. He'd succeed where James had failed. He'd break the cycle. He'd be the one who made it out. But now he understood. James hadn't failed because he lacked discipline or ambition or intelligence. He'd failed because the system was designed to make people like them fail, to put obstacles in their way, to make everything harder, more expensive, more complicated, more impossible. The system wasn't neutral. It was biased, against people without money, without connections, without parents who understood how it worked. The system rewarded people who already had resources, and punished people who were trying to get them. Marcus had done everything right, everything they tell you to do. Work hard, save money, plan ahead, be responsible. And it hadn't mattered, because the system decided he was suspicious. And suspicious meant guilty, and guilty meant frozen, and frozen meant delayed, and delayed meant missed deadlines, and missed deadlines meant lost opportunities. And lost opportunities meant staying exactly where you started, no matter how hard you tried, no matter how much you sacrificed. He'd been saving for college for 3 years, every dollar, every shift, every sacrifice, and then the bank froze his account, and everything disappeared. Not the money. The money was still there, but the opportunity, the chance, the future, that was gone. Taken by a system that saw numbers instead of people, algorithms instead of lives, patterns instead of stories. The next week, Marcus went back to work, to the warehouse, to the delivery job. Same schedule, same shifts, same routine. But something had changed. Not externally, internally. He still worked hard, still showed up, still did his job. But the fire was gone. The purpose, the reason. He was working now just to work, to pay bills, to survive, not to build toward something. There was nothing to build toward, nothing to hope for, Just the slow, grinding repetition of days that blurred together into nothing. His co-workers noticed, asked if he was okay. He said he was fine, just tired. They believed him, or pretended to. It didn't matter. His mother noticed too, asked what happened with college. He told her. She cried, again, said it wasn't fair, said he deserved better, said he should try again. For spring, he said he would, but he didn't mean it, and she knew he didn't mean it. But neither of them said anything. They just sat there, in the kitchen, in the silence, both knowing that something had broken, something that couldn't be fixed. Marcus checked his bank account sometimes. The money was still there, growing even. He was still depositing, still saving, because that's what he'd always done. But he didn't know why anymore. Didn't know what he was saving for. College felt impossible now, not because he lacked money, but because he lacked faith. Faith that the system would let him through, that it wouldn't find another reason to stop him, another flag, another investigation, another delay. It felt easier to just not try, to accept that college wasn't for people like him, that the system would always find a way to keep him out, to keep him where he was, where he belonged, according to the algorithm. 6 months later, he was still at the warehouse, still delivering food, still living at home, still saving money he'd never use. His account balance was over $5,000 now, more than enough for college, but he hadn't reapplied, hadn't even looked at the website. The acceptance letter was still on his wall, but he didn't look at it anymore. It hurt too much, reminded him of what could have been, what should have been, what was stolen, not by a person, by a system. The bank sent him a letter once, apologizing for the inconvenience, explaining that their fraud prevention protocols were designed to protect customers, that false positives happened sometimes, that they regretted any disruption to his life. They offered him a $50 credit, as a gesture of goodwill. $50. For destroying 3 years of work, for killing a dream, for proving that the system didn't care about him, about any of them, just about protecting itself, from itself. He didn't cash the credit. He just kept working, kept saving, kept moving through days that had no destination, no purpose, no meaning. Because that's what you do when the system breaks you. You don't quit, you don't fight, you just exist. In the space between what you wanted and what you got. Between who you were supposed to be and who you became. Between the future you earned and the present you're stuck in. Marcus had been saving for college, for 3 years, for a future that was supposed to be different, better. But then the bank froze his account, and the future froze too. Suspended, pending investigation, for a crime he didn't commit, for a suspicion he didn't deserve, for a pattern he didn't fit. And by the time they unfroze it, by the time they admitted their mistake, by the time they said sorry, it was too late. The deadline had passed. The opportunity was gone. The dream was dead. And no $50 credit could bring it back. The system had won, the way it always did, the way it was designed to. Not through cruelty, not through malice, just through indifference, through algorithms that saw numbers, through policies that protected institutions, through processes that moved slowly. Too slowly for people with deadlines, with dreams, with lives that couldn't wait. Marcus was 19 years old. He'd done everything right, and he'd lost everything anyway. Not because he failed, because the system decided he looked suspicious. And in the system's eyes, looking suspicious was the same as being guilty. And being guilty meant being punished. And being punished meant losing everything you'd worked for, everything you'd sacrificed, everything you'd hoped. And there was no appeal, no recourse, no justice, just a letter of apology and a $50 credit, and a life that would never be what it was supposed to be, because he'd been saving for college until the bank froze his account, and everything he'd built disappeared. Not the money, the future. And once a future is frozen, it never quite thaws. It just sits there, cold, hard, permanent, a reminder of what could have been, if only the system had seen him as a person, instead of a pattern, instead of a risk, instead of a number that didn't fit. But the system doesn't see people. It never did. It never will. It only sees itself, and it always protects itself. even when that means destroying the people it claims to serve. Marcus understood that now. Too late. But he understood. And understanding changed nothing.